Greetings and welcome to the Gaming Codex, the show where I will try to explain to you all the various terms used within video games and the video games industry. And today's term is lag. And what exactly would lag be? Well, according to the general definition, in online gaming, lag is a noticeable delay between the actions of players and the reactions of the server in a video game. There would also be such a thing as input lag, which is the amount of time it takes for your peripherals to actually register your movement or your input, and even for your display to actually show the images you want. Though this kind of lag is usually very hardly noticeable unless something horrible has befallen your system, which is why for the most part lag is what we associate with the online gaming variant. Namely, your connection is somehow strangled, it's not sending the correct amount of information, it's not getting back the correct amount of information, or the server is not functioning properly. So that means that the process by which your local inputs are sent to the server and the reactions for them are received is not optimal. And when that happens, you will noticeably see a delay in your movements. You press forward, your character does not move instantly, it moves after a couple of seconds even. Or you may see that even though you tried to hit a player and you were right on target and you were sure you hit them, the game says you didn't because according to them, because you or them had lag, you weren't actually seeing where they were, or at least where the server saw them to be. This happens a lot when players with different pings, with connections of different qualities to the server, participate in the same game on the same server. To make up for this, a lot of games use some sort of lag compensation which fudges the numbers a bit and makes it seem like you're more closer to each other in terms of time. The reasons for which you may not have a very good connection to the server, even though your internet connection is actually okay and the server is working fine, is for the most part distance, because the farther a connection has to go to get the server, the longer it'll take to actually register the movement. And sometimes even though you may actually be closer to the server itself, like geographically, than your opponent, they may have a better ping because the actual physical connection, the wires that go to the server, in your case are routed by your ISP to New Zealand and you're in France. Well, that's an exaggeration, but sometimes it does happen. ISPs will sometimes use different channels of distribution for information, which will lead to connections of varying quality. What can you do to fix this? Well, you just find servers that have better ping, meaning that the time it takes for an input to be sent to the server and back to you is really low, measured in milliseconds, or at the very least try to not use your connection at the same time for something else like downloads, uploads, streaming. This also tends to help. Now, what would be the popular definition of lag? Well, that would be the game runs slowly. Maybe I'm out of RAM. Now, you may be chuckling at this, some of you, but there is quite often the case that you will see people complaining about lag in single-player games, when what they're actually referring to is low frame rate. Some may say, well, you have enough RAM, why do you have lag in that online game? Again, confusing performance with lag. Performance and lag are not necessarily connected. Sure, if your game runs at 10 frames a second, you're not going to have a good time in terms of performance in the game either way, so lag doesn't even figure there. Yeah, the other players will see you jumping around because you won't actually have a consistent frame rate, and you may actually tank the server itself if it's really poorly coded in terms of being peer-to-peer, but for the most part, the performance of the game on your system is not something that is attributable to lag. Again, especially if it's a single-player game. You can't have lag in single-player. No, wait. You can have lag in single-player if you're playing an online-only game, such as Diablo 3, or maybe Path of Exile. Even though you're alone, you are still playing on a server, so it is unavoidable for you to actually sometimes encounter a discrepancy in the time it takes to communicate your inputs to the server and back. You know, lag. Otherwise, you won't see lag in Skyrim because that's not how lag works. The term tends to be misused quite a lot and it can get a bit annoying. So don't confuse the two, please. Lag generally refers to the delay between a server and the player, and sometimes between the peripherals and the, actual registration of the input, while a bad frame rate is not lag, it's just bad frame rate. Now, what would be the marketing definition of lag? Well, that would be the servers are working fine, nothing to see here. Lag is something that developers, well, not developers, but publishers will sometimes forget to address, especially when it comes to publishers whose name starts with a U, continues the B, then an I, and then call you a Call of Duty fanboy because you thought that the Division was boring. That's because they usually go for the cheapest route possible when creating a multiplayer infrastructure. They make it peer-to-peer, meaning that all the peers communicate directly with each other, and one of them is the host. When that happens, connections are dodgy as hell, and you can expect quite a bit of cheating. Whereas creating actual dedicated servers hosted by the company or by a data center will mitigate much of those problems because everybody is gonna have roughly around the same ping to the server as long as they're in a comparable region. No one's gonna have a direct advantage. And cheating is gonna be a bit harder because the server will not trust what the client is saying about the status of the in-game conditions. It will constantly check against what it is actually saying. Or just ignore the client at all and just send things back, only taking the input as long as it makes sense. And even when they do have dedicated servers, they will have them in just one region, usually the USA, leaving everybody else to scrabble for whatever ping they can get, and left with hundreds of milliseconds of lag. When you factor in how big the world is, actually making a proper multiplayer infrastructure does take a lot of resources. You have to put servers in every major area. You have to put them in North America, South America, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, a bunch of them for China and the rest of Asia. You're gonna have to put them in Africa. We're gonna have to put them in Australia too. So going for the peer-to-peer route is cheaper, more economical, and it assures that everybody's gonna have at least a semblance of a proper ping, even though it's gonna suck in the long run. So that's why peer-to-peer is often the preferred solution of Ubisoft and other companies. Companies that still have a lot of money and could probably just make the server infrastructure properly by renting space in a data center and setting up the servers there. If you'd like to know more about the actual mechanics of communication between the client and the server in the gaming context, I suggest you check out the YouTube channel Battle Nonsense. It delivers a lot of very detailed analysis of how each and every major online video games handles lag compensation, how well the servers work, and it even offers information about other types of lag like input lag and display lag. So go check that out as well. This has been it for the Gaming Codex. Come back next time when we will talk about a brand new subject. Goodbye.